Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My name is Thomas Davis, and I'll be the host today. Welcome for anybody that is new and for anybody that has been here before. Thank you for coming back. Hopefully you'll get some great information out of our Academy session today. It's a really great one. It's going to be on guiding principles for creating better data visualization stories, 5 stages of data visual happiness. So really look forward to hearing about this information. So this is for you. So understand this is, we try to bring fresh ideas and better understanding to things that are currently out there, and of course, practical guidance when we can. Use it for everything that you can. We definitely will take questions about what the content is about today, and also if we have time, we'll take questions about other things if we can get to those. Understand that this is being recorded, so if that is an issue for your organization, you may want to go ahead and drop now. And that is the reason why we record this is we put this out in our community, and we also put it out on YouTube for you to use at a later date, or pass on to one of your coworkers if you think it's good information for them. So again, feel free to ask questions. Use the Q&A if you can, rather than the chat, so we can keep them all in one location. If questions can be answered while the presentation demo is going, we will do those. If it deems an answer that is live, then we'll wait for the end of that, or we may stop periodically in the presentation itself to answer some questions. But again, make sure that you ask all the questions that you can. And if we don't get to your question, whether it be about this topic or about something else, please feel free to put that into the community and ask there. There's many gurus out there outside of ourselves. There's a lot of customers that use the community. So you may get an answer to what you're looking for from not only a ServiceNow person, but of course, someone that's a customer that really knows the information as well. So ask as many questions as you want. So again, my name is Thomas Davis. I am the host. Most of you are probably familiar with me. If you're not, welcome. I am in the community quite a bit, put a lot of information out there and try to answer as many questions as I can. Our presenter today is Rabajan. Very great at what he does. Good information he always brings. I always look forward to hearing anything from Rabajan. So I'm definitely looking forward to this as well. So he'll take over. And with that, Rabajan, if you want to go ahead and start sharing.
Thank you. So thank you, Thomas. Thank you all for having me. Thank you all for joining. My name, as Thomas mentioned, is Robert Jan Barmetlo. I am one of the product managers within the Performance Analytics and Reporting business unit. Today, I'd like to talk to you about these what we see as the 5 steps, the 5 stages, how we can better build visual stories, driving our shared consumers of information to insights, and with that also to decision making. Those things I'm doing myself as I build dashboards or build experiences in the Now platform using analytics as part of that. And figuring out how we can sort of enhance those to really drive our users of that information, our consumers of that information, to better decision making. So this is the normal safe harbor slide. I always quickly show it. I will definitely not read it out full, but be aware that I will most likely mention a forward-looking statement that are based on the current information available. And that it could always be the case that something I now mention is the actual result, the actual performance, the actual achievement might just be different. All right, what I'd like to start with is a story. And this story is unfortunately not really a happy story. This story is about the London's 1854 cholera outbreak. And the map we're looking at is also an old map of central London. It was used by a man named John Snow. And I hear you think you mean that John Snow? No, I don't mean that one. It's actually this one. And what he did as a leader in the development of medical hygiene around that time, he used this map, and he used it as a geographical map. He used it as a sort of dot map to illustrate those that concentration of those cases of cholera. And fortunately, he made a strong connection with the level of quality in one of the water pumps that the people were using. So he used all these statistics to illustrate the connection of those cases with, in particular, one water pump that they actually found out later was delivering this sewage polluted water to homes, and with that leading the increase. And now in a world with data visual charts, this geographical map solution would probably look something like this. And that actually already tells a pretty good story. It pretty good tells what's going on. Now, how sad this story actually is, this is visual storytelling at its best, and actually within a single chart, within a single geographical map, within a single picture. Without knowing what the problem is, the story actually already tells you the solution. And now, not only his study helped that outbreak fortunately come to an end, it also gave birth to what we now know to be the first data visualization in history. So this map, this thing that we're looking at, is the first data visualization in history. And it also shows, of course, with that the power of storytelling as a whole. And with that, this visual definitely does, but with that also powers the message that I'd like to hope to get across, as in, hey, if we build good visual stories out there that our users, our consumers really understand, we are really helping them driving towards actions. So looking at the problem, there was a problem that I saw happening and that I often still see happening. And it's actually a few problems, and they often hold us back from creating these good data visual experiences, resulting in a lot of time being spent in creating these visual displays. And in the end, they often fail to really reach their goals, and having the people consuming them having struggles to understand, with the risk that they don't understand at all, or maybe even worse, that they understand it incorrectly. So with that, the technology is one of those problems. That sometimes there's a lack, or sometimes there are too many technical capabilities that sometimes limit us in a way to create the best visual experience we'd like to. And then the second one is the knowledge of what's important and for whom is something important, and what drives something to be meaningful or insightful, and what drives a consumer to the point that you are actually trying to make with that visual story. And then the third one being the approach. People often start wrong, or they miss crucial steps in identifying what's best for their consumers. Now, in today's presentation, I'll actually touch upon all of them, but I'll mainly focus a little bit around two, but mostly around number three. So, of course, with problems come opportunities. If you were looking at the technology, we are and we will continuously evolve our Now platform's capabilities, our canvases, our data visualizations to allow more and better creation. Whether it is a dashboard, whether it is an empty canvas, whether it is a part of a workflow experience that you want to add some analytics to drive your users to actions or to insights. Also more modern look and feel, more configurable options. I'll give a little bit of a glimpse towards the end of this presentation on how that would look. And the second one on knowledge, that's what we need to know to build better data visual displays, to get from just the state where we are showing data is information to actually, when does something become an actionable insight? And think about having core design principles, having structural guidance, having design tips, best practices. Of course, the right people involved that understand the data or that understand the process or service that you're trying to measure. And then finally, the approach is where people often start wrong. And this is where I think those 5 stages will definitely help. Now, you might think for whom does this apply? I think actually it's for everyone. I'm not exactly targeting a specific role here. I'm not exactly targeting the builder, as I think it can be actually beneficial for all, whether you're that business analyst, whether you're that admin, whether you're that service manager or owner or any kind of knowledge worker, a product manager, a developer, or maybe a designer. If you are that builder or if you are that consumer, it's just good to understand how visual displays are built, or how they should be built to better understand and better learn to consume them. Now, in the platform, we already have a few ways to, of course, show visual displays. places where we are transforming data into information, hopefully also already into insights. We have the mobile app, we have service portal, of course, we have maybe custom charts as part of your forms or a specific platform application. But also, of course, this and the example here on the screen is showing the responsive canvas, the responsive dashboards that we have in the platform. And as much as the 5 steps apply to all kinds of visual displays, I always call it also visual display, not in particularly a dashboard. I will be using the dashboard most likely as one of the more like the reference that I will use as a reference within this presentation, because I think everyone is aware of how a dashboard often looks and what we're trying to achieve using a dashboard as a visual display. Now and again, no matter what the sort of builder role or consumer role you have, if you are that report or dashboard builder, your common goal should actually always be to, for the largest number of people, provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. And just to be sure, by this, we mean the least amount of effort for the end user to consume. As the visual displayer, you might need to make a considerable effort to create that best experience for those end users. Now, the steps in this presentation apply to any place where you want to create that visual display, whether it's that single chart as we saw in the example of Jon Snow, or it's maybe as embedded analytics as part of some experience, or maybe as that dashboard. It is the goal to really make sure that your consumers with the least amount of effort get that understanding. So the thing that we're trying to do here is we're trying to transform data eventually into actions. And when we start with data, and we all have a lot of data, we try to turn that into information. And that's often through a report, through a chart. And then the goal is to turn these actually into insights that enable action, or that either turn maybe something into a business decision, that a business decision can be made, or that immediately maybe as part of the platform enable that action. So you want to create a meaningful and insightful data visual experience that enable those in-platform decision-making and workflow actionability. Don't forget that when you're reading a visualization, or your users, your consumers are reading your visual displays, they always have a limited amount of brain power to actually dedicate to the problem that you're trying to explain. Some of that brain power will actually already be used for decoding the data visualization that you used. And if that's a tricky one, there might not be that much brain power left to actually understand the message. So we always say, like, try to bring it back to the core, to the essence, and to a clean and simple experience as it can be. Now, the most important questions to ask before actually starting that journey to this goal are, who is the audience, and what's that message? What is the point that you're trying to make? Because good data visualizations, they make us get to the point we're trying to make with that data much faster. All right, so this is another great explanation of a dashboard, or of a visual display made or as told by Stephen Few. And I think this is such a good explanation because of the fact that it highlights these 2 important aspects. One is you are building that visual display with the most important information, but also the second part is where it says the visual display should have this distinct purpose or value to really drive people to something. One of the most common mistakes that I made and that I see a lot of people make is when we are building dashboards is the desire to immediately jump in. I created, if I thought about, hey, we need a dashboard for that to tell some story or to tell some information, I immediately opened the dashboard builder, started with a white canvas and started started putting out widgets that I could think of and see if I can make a story out of that. This is somewhat impossible to then later put a functionality on top. If you start that way, it is it will most likely lead to this storytelling disaster. It might be a pretty disaster, but it will still be a disaster. So these are these 5 stages of what I call data visual happiness. And the approach, of course, is while using those 5 stages to start from 1 all the way into 5, and of course do all of them with the fullest effort. You lay the foundation of a meaningful, insightful data visual display in the first steps, and then later with 4 and 5, you are actually looking at, okay, how do I structure this? How do I style this to become a good modern look and feel experience? I'll give you this example, and this is actually an example that tells the story around number 1, 2, and 3 of those 5 steps really good, where we have a lot of strong data, strong information. The audience is good, but we didn't really succeed into into the experience around, into the structure. So it becomes a little bit of a hard to understand visual story, because it's so dense. There's so much information. I don't really know where to start and how this story goes. And we also have this example, and this might actually also be a good example on number 1, 2, and 3. I'm not really familiar with this in particular dashboard, but it definitely looks good. There's a nice grid. It's structured. It's nicely styled. But imagine that if number 1, the audience, number 2, the type, and number 3, the data would be wrong here. This dashboard will soon just not be used anymore. People will maybe use it once and then don't come back. And I saw it with my own dashboards that I created, where I thought, hey, this is a good dashboard. It looks good. But eventually understanding or seeing that users didn't come back to the dashboard because it wasn't telling them the story that they needed. All right, let's start with number 1, which is the audience. And the audience is, whenever you're building something meaningful and insightful, most likely you're not building that for yourself. In some cases you are building it for yourself, but most likely you're building it for your users, for your group. So it should also be focused around meeting your end users' needs. So the first step is actually to identify for whom this visual display is for. So as the builder of in this case, a dashboard, don't make the mistake of approaching it as what is it that I want to say, but completely approach it from what does my audience need? So you have to do that research. You have to do that recon. You have to do the analysis of your audience and what exactly that need is. And with that, you can ask questions like who's that persona type, and what is their objective, and how will they consume, and where will they consume, and is it on a device? Is it on a big TV screen? How much time do they have, and where are they actually in the journey within the platform, and what's most likely their next action going to be? So understanding these questions tell a lot about the end user of your visual display and will help you greatly into positioning it in the right way. And of course, this very much also ties in with how we approach our Now Platforms performance analytics, where one of the first things we often do is to look at performance in the context of people, to really start measuring and optimizing services and building metrics and indicators to really achieve those goals. So every role has all these different responsibilities, which comes with different business goals, and every role will have different questions that will help them meet their objectives. And that's actually the same also with building a visual display and with understanding your audience. Like who is that persona, and what is it exactly what they need? At what angle are they looking at the information? So what to do for that audience step is really to sit down with your end users, your end consumers, your audience, to understand everything around those goals, those ultimate objectives that they have, their current pain points that they have, and what they're trying to get out of the data, out of the information to become an insight and to become something actionable for them. All right, number 2 is what we call the type. And now that we know the persona audience and have the answers to all those questions around their purpose and need, it's time to define that type of visual display that we are actually making. And with that, we first need to understand what a different type can actually bring. And at the following stages, at the following steps of this 5-step plan, these will then also define the data structure, and these will also define the chart types and the layout, and maybe things like interactivity and next best actions on top of those widgets. So again, getting actually this one right is extremely important, because this is literally the foundation of the sort of building into a consumption is going how it's going to work. So high level, we can roughly divide them into these 4 types. I think there are actually more, but mostly around your use cases, you will always see them around these types of visual displays. It's strategic, it's operational, it's tactical, and it's analytical. Or maybe in some cases, a slight combination of some. As an example, if it's more of a high-level KPI driven overview within this strategic type, so these are these characteristics, these what you would then most likely integrate within that dashboard type to make it successful. If that's the need, if it needs to have this high-level overview, if it needs to have this strategic overview, you need things like your targets. You needs to be indicator or KPI driven. You need these metrics. You need a lot of trend info to understand if that's what the audience actually needs. Or maybe it might be this more time sensitive, this real time info into actions of the operational type. Could also be this super information rich, often driven into this decision-making, interactive, tactical view. Or finally, this more performance-driven and data-centric analytics display with a lot of options to actually already do a little bit of data exploration within. So, and again, remember that defining the type correct, and then later the building the structure of your visual display to serve that purpose, that will greatly help delivering the message and bring that point to what your end consumers need.
Hey, Robert John, there's a question that came in that maybe since you're speaking of that on that last slide, it might be good to go ahead and answer it now. And the question is, operational and tactical seem to have a lot of overlap. Is there key differences?
I think usually the key differences is where it comes to how sensitive it is to time. And I'm actually showing an example later in the presentation where, and that one is super operational focus, where they immediately want to take an action in case there's something wrong. Strategic often goes a lot about making strategic choices. So they might have the same characteristics, but the next step, the next action is definitely different. All right, number 3 is the data. And if we look at the data, it's the data that supports it all for your audience, for their needs, for that type of display that we just already picked. Only when you know the questions in your users' heads, you will know if they actually have the right data to answer those. So selecting the right data, and it's often also its granularity is really key. And without that, it's somewhat impossible to make your information useful. And be aware there of the classic pitfall where you should never let the data that you do have dictate the content of the visual display that you are building. It should always be in a right balance, and always advocate for the user and their needs and not the data. This was also one of those bad practices, I would almost say, that I started with while building that visual display. I knew what data I had, and I immediately start using that data because I had it, and then try to put some functionality on top. So there are, of course, several ways that you can structure the data, how you aggregate the data, how you can group it, and maybe together with other data to better enhance that story context, or maybe based on one of the most common comparisons being time. And we might have shown this one in previous Academy sessions. This is very much telling the story of how reporting and performance analytics work, specifically reporting where it is all about this single moment in time, and performance analytics that gives you a lot of context on time as a whole. Like, where did we come from? Did we improve? Where do we want to be? When will we get there? So this already, if the need is around around that, to be it trend and performance over time, you immediately know that performance analytics is the way, because that will offer you those capabilities. But there's also, of course, performance of your data in context of all these other influences. Where there are all these other influences that might be able to influence my performance, and the other factors that affect those objectives. And then the question is, can you use those within the same visual display to visualize that context in the best form? If you can grab these pieces of data together to start visualizing that context, then it becomes really powerful. And the example that I'm actually showing is the example of, let's say that I'm planning a post-COVID trip, where I'm very much looking forward to. And obviously my objective would be to have the best trip possible. And then I start to layer all these contextual data points that I can have to weigh out the best option to reach that objective. Like what is the weather doing? What is the traffic doing? What is the distance to that location? Are there certain requirements around luggage? Is there something around safety? So all that information together, if you can combine that to actually tell that visual story, then it becomes really powerful. And yeah, like I mentioned, as in the end, if you would not have that context, as Albert Einstein mentioned, the data without context is then just organized information. So we identify these different layers of data, and it's almost like peeling like an onion. You should understand the data model that will then enable your end users to have a look at all these different angles of that data, being, for example, the measure, which is the numeric quantifiable piece of data. So it could be sales, profit, retention, CSAT. But there's also the dimension. So the dimension represents then the different facets of a given measure. So it could be time or region or product or division. And of course, hierarchy, what is then be further broken down into its own hierarchy, being maybe a year, a quarter, a month, a day, going into the grain, and where we actually say each level of the hierarchy is referred to the grain of the dimension. And then finally into the metric, which is the type of a data measure that then represents a piece of data in relation to one or more dimensions and grains. All right, before jumping into number 4, I quickly want to talk about performance. And though performance is much more a user experience requirement, I would say, because one thing I tend to always mention is a good user experience starts with a good performance. It is the case that you can often make or break it through the data stage. So you always have to, of course, count that also in when building these visual displays. Like, will it still perform because I put all this data together and I'm doing all this querying or this collecting of data? Will it still perform? All right, number 4 is the step where we are structuring the whole visual display. We call it organize, and this is actually the first step where we are sort of starting with designing the display. So actually, in step 4, we're sketching the display. Again, what I used to do is I immediately grabbed that white canvas dashboard and I started building. But for now, the way I look at it is I need all that previous information, 1, 2, and 3, which will actually bring me to structuring and organizing that visual display. So this is also the stage where we use a lot of best practice and guidance on displaying the structure, design guidelines, and all these best practices on what you can best do to make a visual story being best understood by your consumers. So the question automatically comes, how should everything that I defined before be best laid out on that visual display? And then there are tons of best practices out there, way too many to in particular all highlight, but I'll mention a few areas that are really worth investigating for your own visual displays to really make sure that we can drive the users into their objectives. And the first of that one is the hierarchy. And with hierarchy, we say that the way I'm now looking at it is I never assume that all information that you want to share is equally important. There's a level of hierarchy within, and you can show that level of hierarchy with the position of the charts where you're putting them within the visual display, as well as maybe the size of the widgets. Think about what is, for example, expected to get the most visual airtime. So those things that you expect to get the most visual airtime, or that you want to have the most visual airtime, you put in the upper left, because that is proven to be the area where people consume the most. Also, continuing on that with layout, thinking about it as a sort of newspaper setup. So the newspaper in the world of journalism, they always set up in the same way, and it's often this inverted triangle where there's the most important information at the top, and then there's this overview in the middle, and then there's the background information that allow for more deep dive at the bottom. And ideally, your dashboards, your visual displays should sort of follow the same logic, where you place your high level insights or those strong insights on the top, and then followed by information supporting those insights, and then finally maybe some finer level details and trends at the bottom. Then another one is consistency. So think about being always consistent, that your end users don't really have to change their sort of mental gears while consuming. So if you're always consistent while building these visual displays, they will expect this continuous flow, and they will expect this easy scanning in any new visual display that they will consume next, which comes so designing through certain patterns, or whenever there's this pattern, a dashboard always looks better when they have this consistent layout. Group related information closer to one another. So if there's a related information, put it together, maybe as part of these container cards or something. As you can see here at the example, actually here at the top, where everything is sort of in this single wide card. Then there's alignment, visually align your elements for this more balanced look and feel. So always try to place the widgets within a grid layout. Grid really help to achieve this effective alignment. They form this sort of structure and skeleton for your design. Proximity is, again, putting related information together, help the user understand it more quickly. Don't scatter related information around the visual display. And then white space is another example where we say white space is always good to give a little bit of breathing space. Don't make it too dense, as the example that I showed at the start. If there's a little bit of white space in your visual display, it will help the end user in taking a quick breathe and then consuming the next. Data overload, also related to the example that I showed, where there was a lot of data. Don't overwhelm your users with that data or that information overload. I'm definitely bad at keeping track of all these multiple things at once. So maybe if there's a lot of data that you want to show, a lot of information that you want to show, maybe consider really grouping it together per subject and maybe putting it in tabs to really make sure that you're creating these visual displays with a limited set of data or information on top. Real time is a good practice, though, where we say real time is great and definitely in the context of our platform, where we have a lot of data inside our platform, so you can immediately show everything real time. What I also say is do it, but don't overdo it. Know when to best apply it. It becomes most powerful if you apply it there where it definitely makes sense. And I think that same counts for interactivity. There are several interactivity options that we allow in the platform. Also there, it's good to sort of help to tell that story, to go through a certain interactive journey, but also don't overdo it. You don't want to bring people too much away from the essence, from the message that you were trying to tell.
Hey, Robert Jan, real quick,
Yep.
Speaking of interactivity, there's a question that says, where should interactive filters be placed? Top left, somewhere else? Is there a standard on that, or kind of wherever it fits?
Yeah, it's a great question. So on the one hand, and I put them here on the top, I actually always, if I always try to put them on the top. Then again, I'm also conscious of the fact, like, and I just told the upper left actually gets the most airtime, which is good because people will see those interactive filters. But on the other hand, you would actually want to use that real estate then maybe for a strong chart or maybe for a strong score. So that's always the sort of balance I'm trying to find. Is if it's not too much, if they're not too many, I'll put them on the top, and otherwise I put them. And I think much of our best practice sort of out of the box content that we ship, we put them on the right. The thing is, if you're also there, if you're consistent, if you always put it that way, your users will start to understand. They will start to expect it in a certain area. So then it's not really a problem anymore. Highlighting is great. For example, conditional coloring. The example you can see here in the back with if something's going good or if something's going bad. So that immediately draws the eye of your end users to something that's happening, which is always a good practice. Scores in general are the best. Scores are one of the, next to a list, I would say scores are the easiest to understand by our end consumers. They immediately know what's going on. They see a score, they see a value, and they understand it. With charts, pies, donuts, time series, or bar charts, you always have to first translate, understand that chart before you're actually getting to the message. And then finally, of course, the chart type selection. And again, we talked about the first steps, and definitely the type and the data will define your chart types. There are many best practices also around good chart type selection. And based on that, it is always a good practice to follow those, to make sure that you understand, to really make a good conscious decision around those categories and what types to use for that data or that maybe that aggregation that I have. So which is the best type of comparison I can choose, and how many variables do you want to show into a single chart? How will you display data over a period of time, or among items, or among groups? So all those answers to those questions will then basically already provide you the best chart type for a certain set of how you're trying to transform data into information. And ideally, while going through those steps, you actually have already answered those questions. So this will become just a logical next step, as in, okay, I need a bar chart, I need a time series, or something like that.
And Robert-Jan, real quick, on the screen prior, there was a follow-up question about filters that just said, why do he's asking, why do my filters look different than the ones that are on the top of your page? And obviously,
okay,
this comes down to what we're looking at.
Yeah, so I'll also explain that. I'll also show it in the quick demo. The screen that I'm showing here in the back is actually a dashboard being built on what we call the Now Experience platform. And that's the UI platform where, for example, also many of the workspaces that are being built by the workflow teams are now being delivered upon. And that UI platform allows us much more flexibility and configurability when it comes to building these dashboards. That's also the UI where we want to bring a lot of the more configurable options to charts, to filtering, to in general, more modern look and feel too. So that is something that is coming, or actually the one that I'm showing here on the screen is actually a dashboard that I built on a Quebec instance. So that is actually already possible. You could already build dashboards like this. The cool thing about these interactive filters that we're using over there is, as from Quebec, Performance Analytics and Reporting delivers these filters, what we call unified. So we don't, you don't need separate filters for performance analytics or reporting. So not for indicator or normal table data anymore. It's the same filter that will filter both. So after you've selected the chart type, moving on quickly on the grid, and this grid is actually showing as a sort of heat map where we talked about hierarchy and layout, and it's good to have grids, and this heat map is actually showing the most common usage tracking. So that many studies have been done for users where they looked at, okay, where do people look when consuming a visual display? And most often it is on the upper left, and they start scanning it as a newspaper. Most often they don't reach the third row. Imagine what will happen if you actually have data that's beyond the first glance that you have to scroll to. In some cases, users cannot even scroll because it might be somewhere on a TV screen. So always consider these things when building these visual displays, like will people actually be possible to get there? And even though if they can get there, will they? Because most likely the things that are mentioned here on the top are the most consumed ones. Personalization I always like, because it very much it very much creates that sort of stickiness, and it really takes your end users into the visual story. It's the reason why map reports always work so amazingly well, because the first thing that you would do is you try to find yourself on the map, like what is happening with where I live. And I'm from Europe, I'm from the Netherlands, and it says the median age here is 42, and it's actually pretty spot on. I'm close to that one. So that's how these things work. Also, this one with the age groups, if you have data or if you have a need around that, and you can bucket it into these age groups, that always works, because the first thing that people will do is, how am I doing? How am I fitting in? And then finally, as part of this organization step, there's this quote on simplicity, and I think that one is pretty spot on. It should be minimalistic. It should be clean. It should be and clean. That also applies as a visual display as a whole, as a dashboard, but also maybe just charts in particular by itself. So always try to keep it as simple as can be, and less is definitely more here. Then moving on to the final step, and the final step is actually it should actually then be the easiest, because this is where we do the extra styling, just to make it a little bit of a better experience, to use styling elements to your advantage to really help building that visual story, and to make it more easily consumable, but also immediately this more engaging experience. So for example, if we look at this example chart, color is one. It's a great effective way to really grab the user's attention, and to guide them through information. If you can do things like here with a certain group, as in dashboards is always purple, or reporting is always pink. That really helps bringing that structure. Again, also for coloring, the same as with interactivity, you can do it because it makes it more engaging, but don't overdo it, because it might also sacrifice the whole bigger picture you're trying to tell. Typography is one under styling. So choosing the right fonts, font styling, interfaces. For any kind of UI that's already difficult. For charting in particular, fonts always present their own specific challenges, because labels or axes, anything becomes pretty small. So you really have to consider using the right typography. Tooltips can also work great as an opportunity to really reinforce the story that you're trying to tell, just to give a little bit of extra information, some extra helpful context to your end users. Also, but be aware that only works if the users can actually interact with the visual display. And then the last one is formatting. So with formatting, it is critical to bring this consistency to your visual display, and that comes with many particular chart elements, but definitely also applicable to for example, labels and formatting, to really make it consistent across different charts or other elements within the full experience that you're building. All right, so those were the 5 steps, which brings me all the way at the end. I've given a lot of information, but probably the best design guideline tip that I learned over the last years was you will not do it right the first time. So it's always a question of iterating on a visual display, asking feedback, like what's working, what's not. Don't expect it to be perfect from the start. It will definitely evolve. So ask that feedback from your end users and iterate those new versions. So what I now quickly wanted to show was a quick demo of an example that I went through, where I actually applied those 5 stages. I'm a little bit conscious of the time, so I will quickly just go through these. I will not reach them out, but what I did was first looked at the audience, like who's the persona, what's their purpose. In this case, it was around a IT agent team. Those were the consumers, but a supervisor wanted to have that dashboard. So really trying to figure out like what was their need, what was their journey, what was their next action. In this case, it came down to, it was mostly an operational need what they have, and maybe a little bit tactical here and there, but the need for the type was mostly operational. The data related to step number 1 and 2, I found out that there was a lot of real time. There was also a lot of trending in their need. And then finally in step 4, I started sort of drawing, I started sketching that visual display, like how would that look? And then finally at number 5, I started to add the styling in, which is this one. So this is more or less, it kind of looks the same because I use this overlay background also for that one to provide this more modern look and feel experience. But that's very much on the consumption and how and the modern look and feel. Of course, everything was around the actual audience and the type and the data, like how are these things supporting this visual display. So there's this hierarchy that I thought about, like what is the most important. Using a grid, it needs to be sort of clean, not too dense. I wanted to use highlighting as colors in it to really draw the users into things that are happening on the screen. It needed to be personal. So one thing that I wanted to apply here was to make it a little bit more contextual, personal, dynamic, was what's close by me, what's close by my team, what are my work tasks, what are my priorities. These always create that stickiness. And of course, having the right data points, really understanding like what data is important for them and how can we drive those to actions. Okay, so maybe just 1 minute on what's next, because I do want to explain that this is a lot of theory on how you can approach things, but I am also thinking of how can we use this best in the context of our platform, where we're building experiences, where we're allowing for experience building, whether it's a feature like KPI Composer within performance analytics, that could nicely already fit in, like if we understand the users and what they need and certain metrics that they need to reach certain goals, we could potentially already tie it into helping the end user also building good visual displays out of that. So trying to tie in these 5 steps with something like KPI Composer, or maybe just as dashboard templates, or maybe as something as the App Engine Studio, where most likely we are sort of already answering the same question, like for whom is it, what are they trying to do, what is their goal, what is the journey that they're in. So it's very much fits also there. So what I'm currently doing is seeing to what extent I can really apply these 5 steps into the integration of there, where we're building visual displays, to not make it something that you need to do after. You can still do that, but already integrated in something like where you are building the experience from scratch, for example, something like App Engine Studio. With that, are there any questions?
Robert John, let me first say incredible content and really good stuff, amazing stuff that I know that many people, many customers that visit the community or even on our YouTube will find this and get a great deal out of it. I mean, as many years as I've been doing it, I definitely got some things out of it. So really good stuff, and I appreciate it. The couple of questions that we had come here quickly were, well, the first one is more of a statement. The KPI Composer doesn't use this workflow in the dashboard tab. That would be a fabulous improvement. I don't know if you want to speak to that. I don't know if that there may be some things in the ideal portal around that, or maybe something.
No, totally. And we've been, totally. And that's a great comment. And that's indeed also something that we've seen and also see where we can apply this to. So that's definitely something that's currently under consideration. Like how can we best connect these 2 worlds together, that if we're figuring out something for KPI Composer, as in, hey, this is your company, your organizational goals with these metrics, how can we bring that to life easily by building a visual display around it?
Great. And so someone asked, is it possible to, I guess, get the dashboard which you shared for a sample? So I don't know if that's out there, or if that's in out of the box contents, the one that you displayed and how great it was. There's someone asking if that's actually available, but I don't know the answer to that.
So I'm not sure if we are allowed to just grab that one, and of course it always also comes with the one I built. Very much came to the story and the need and the audience need that it requested it for. So it might not be the case that it's always the same. I do think there are a lot of similarities, or there are a lot of times the sort of structure always comes back to where you say, hey, the most important information needs to be at the top. Ideally, those are scores because people read them easily as their headline. So that's something that I see more and more, and that's also something that we are now working towards, as in, hey, can we just deliver that as a sort of dashboard template, as some dashboard pattern that you would select first, and it would start with that. You could still have the option to then do anything with the contents within, but it will kind of already serve you or direct you into that area, with not being too much driven into a certain area, because we also want to empower everyone to really think about, okay, but is it helpful for the audience, and is it helpful for the type and for the data? So I'm not sure, answering the question, I'm not super sure whether we can share this one in particular. We can come back to that and maybe then also show it on the community. Okay, great.
So another one's kind of off topic, but you actually may be a really good person to answer this question. But does ServiceNow intend to provide a way to migrate dashboards to the new Now platform experience?
Yep. Yes, we are. So that's the goal. As much as that new platform UI is there currently, where you can build now these new experiences from scratch on, because it's not fully feature complete yet. We don't have all the charts there yet. It might miss some functionality as well. So we're working really hard to make sure it's not even feature complete, but actually feature improved. Like where can we actually learn from experiences in the classic UI, in the core UI dashboards, and learn from those and bring them better into the new. And once those are there, deliver a migration path to migrate the contents, the artifacts itself, whether those are the PA widgets, the reports, but also the dashboards as a whole, to that environment. So that's definitely something that's in our roadmap.
Great, thank you, Robert Jan. And then the last one we'll get to here, and I'll actually take this as a note to see what I can do, but would it be possible to get a blog with an end-to-end worked example of design from KPI right through to dashboard, covering your 4 types? So that might be something, Robert Jan, that you and I could work together to see if we could put a blog out there that would actually show something like that. Yeah, that will be fabulous. Yeah. Okay, we got a couple more here real quick. Is there a plugin we need for the new UI?
I don't think so. I don't think there's a separate plugin of using the new, as from Quebec, the Now Experience platform is available. It might be that some specific workspaces from some specific apps or workflows come with the plugin, but I don't think the actual platform gives a plugin. I don't know for sure, but I don't think so. Okay, and I guess going along with that, is there a particular role necessary to see it? And maybe that's something there, maybe why someone doesn't see it. Yeah, that could be that it does. Once experiences are created, they need a certain role, or to implement them from scratch. There is information on the docs, and I bet also on the communities, but definitely on the docs on how to build a new experience within the Now Experience platform from scratch. And I bet that also has information around the roles. Okay, great. And yeah, they said they got it. Good. All right. And then the last question by Maggie here is, and Maggie, it might be good to just put this into the community just from time's sake, but when migrating dashboards to different environments, we often get canvas error and page names are not moved up. With the UI experience, is this experience, will it be better? And again, you might want to
put that into the community, and we could probably talk to that a little bit more just from a time perspective. So, yeah. So with that, let me go ahead and take sharing back here real quick, and we'll close out. So again, Robert John, thank you very much. Really good information. Can't wait to actually share this one out there and just see how many people use it. I think that everyone that gets new or becomes new to ServiceNow, or even new to a role which requires them to do any sort of reporting or dashboarding or anything like that, would do themselves great service to watch this first before they just dive into creating anything. So really good stuff. So thank you again for everything that you showed today. So this along with this session, along with past sessions, are always out in the community. So make sure that you go there and check them out. And maybe I can get this to move forward. There we go. Make sure that you use it in a community. Everyone should know that there's great information that's out there in the community. So make sure that you're checking it out. And of course, don't forget about Now Learning. There's really great information and training that's out there, along with now some knowledge labs that are out there as well. So take advantage of that and get that really good information as well. So next time in 2 weeks on August 25th, we're actually going to talk about seismic filters. So if that is something that you're curious in, which is with Rome, so, make sure that you come in 2 weeks and check that out as well. Some other sessions or academy sessions that you might be interested in is there's a flat platform foundations that's out there, mobile app and virtual agent. Make sure that you check those out for really good information as well. And then, of course, we always like to hit this one because it's important. A lot of questions come to the community, but there is a article that's out there that actually will help you write a really good question so you can get an answer as soon as possible. So make sure that you look at that when writing a question. And then always remember, which are just, things that I just talked about. Make sure that you use the community for your questions, catch up on previous academy sessions. And if you have an idea of something that's not out there that you'd like to see, make sure you put it in the Ideal portal so we can get some visibility on it. So hopefully it'll happen in future releases. And of course, take training, take as much training as you possibly can, which will make you a stronger user. And with that, thank you again for coming, and we'll see you next week. And Robert John, thank you once again.